But this message is written from her, and it starts off saying, on behalf of the AS President, IVP, EVPLA, and Student Advocate General, they would like to welcome you to the Anti Semitism training session today. The following curriculum supports their vision for the 2021-2022 academic year and the knowledge they find essential for the association as we start our fall quarter 2021. Please note these training sessions are a portion of the information you will be required to learn after legal code. Please take this to be an active participant by engaging with your fellow peers. They look forward to serving you. And as another gentle reminder, we just ask you please engage with the topic at hand with sensitivity and respect for one another as we move forward. And with that, that concludes my introduction. So I'd like to give the floor to our facilitator today, Peter Levy.
Great. Thank you, Holly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have a lot of information to share with you all. And is my, oh shoot, I think I messed that up. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me start this again. My program quit out on me. So while I'm doing this, let me introduce myself. So I'm Rabbi Peter Levy. I'm the regional director for the Anti-Defamation League, actually a little bit south of you all in Orange County and Long Beach. I'm also a gaucho. I spent 5 years at UCSB back in the late 80s and early 90s. And I have incredibly wonderful and fond memories of my life at Santa Barbara. And I feel like I've spent the past 30 years trying to figure out how I can get back to Santa Barbara, but haven't quite figured it out yet. So I like to visit regularly at minimum. All right, so let me screen share again. And there we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Looks good from here.
Okay, excellent. All right, and I want to open the chat since I hope that we're able to interact throughout this, and then also at various times instead of using polls, I'm going to use the chat function to ask for some interaction. But also please feel free to just call out or interrupt me if there are any questions. So our goal today is to take a look at anti-Semitism and come to a deeper understanding of it for all of you in your positions in leadership at UCSB. So as I mentioned, I work for the ADL. For those who aren't familiar with the ADL, it's an organization that was founded 108 years ago in 1913 with the mission, which has been the same for over a century, to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure a just and fair treatment for all people. And it was as relevant as sort of the rampant anti-Semitism that was being experienced at the beginning of the 20th century. I have Leo Frank there as an example of a Jewish individual from New York who had married and moved down to Atlanta, worked in his uncle's pencil factory. There was the rape and murder of a young girl who worked in his factory, and he was framed for that. And everyone knew he was framed for it as being a Northern Jew. And when the governor actually commuted his death sentence after the sham trial, the locals broke him out of jail and lynched him on the nearest tree. And that was what was going on at that period of time, which really sort of woke up the country to sort of the horrors of anti-Semitism and what was happening. And then I was a picture of Charlottesville, which was just in 2017, a short 4 years ago, where we saw people with Confederate stars and bars and Nazi banners and some in KKK robes marching openly and in a racist and anti-Semitic demonstrations that ended up in the murder of one protester. Our mission to fight against hatred and anti-Semitism is as relevant today as it has been. ADL fights against hate as an anti-hate organization 1,000,000,001 different ways. But it's easy enough to sort of lump our work sort of into three broad categories. We investigate extremists and haters online and off, and interrupt them when we can, and turn over information to law enforcement when it's actionable. We educate. We run anti-bias and bullying prevention programs in K-12 schools, in communities, in places of business, wherever we're invited in to do that. We are also the largest NGO educating with law enforcement. You can't become an FBI agent without going through ADL training, and we do regular briefings and updates and convening of law enforcement, mainly intelligence officers, about information that we have and the expertise that we have mainly on extremist threats. And we advocate. We advocate legislatively in both in locally, statewide, and nationally. We also advocate in the community. We advocate for people who are targeted by hate incidents and hate crimes through direct action as well as coalition building. And that's really the way that we can counteract prejudice, bias, bigotry, and bullying while preserving the democratic ideals of this country. We're very strong First Amendment supporters, as well as other civil liberties, like access to votes. That's enough about ADL. And briefly about me. So just a little bit of what we want to cover. I understand we have 2 hours together, so just opening and welcoming, which we've just done. I want to go over just a few little ground rules, which I think Holly already reiterated for you all. And then sort of walk through a little bit, who are the Jewish people? How do we understand anti-Semitism? Do a little bit of deeper dive, get some of the nuances through white supremacy, some of the adaptive nature of anti-Semitism, look at some of the data, and really try and give context for what anti-Zionism is, and then end with a little bit of what you all could do about that. That's the idea. Now, though we're focusing on, let's say, Jewish identity today of the Jewish people, right? We could be, in much of this, we could be talking about any other identity group, whether it's race, religion, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, country of origin, ability. Much of what we're going to explore is really transferable, but we're going to really focus in this case on the Jewish people and that particular identity to try and fill in some of those gaps. But of course, the way to be an ally, which is super important, is the way to ally with any group is to get to know them, to hear their stories, how they understand themselves, their interactions in the world, how they are impacted by what's going on around them. And getting to know sort of the complicated, intersections of what it means to be a human being with, any type of identity that we all are. So that is our journey today. So just a little bit, about some community agreements. And first, I just want to recognize that we have a difficult topic today when we talk about hate and anti-Semitism and even jump into issues of extremism. So having some just basic agreements, to help facilitate healthy conversation for us. So one is obviously we want to respect confidentiality of everyone here, who's going to be sharing and talking, and also using I statements, not speaking for others or generalizing, but really speaking for our own ideas and opinions and our own experiences. So, and then certainly respecting others. And we want to share the airtime, right? Not dominate and not drive our own agendas, but really let me drive the agenda. That's why I was asked to be here, but certainly respond and share with each other. And like I said, this content can be difficult and challenging at times. So if you need to take mental or emotional health breaks, do that. And certainly if you need to take bio breaks, please do that also. So with that, let's jump in. Who are the Jewish people? We really can't uncover anti-Semitism if we don't understand who the Jewish people are. And it's often a misunderstood who the Jewish people are, and therefore misunderstanding what anti-Semitism is and how anti-Semitism operates in the world. So who are the Jewish people? Well, we're all different. Basically, you ask any individual Jew and they'll share their identity in a whole variety of ways. I happen to be Jewish. I happen to be a non-Orthodox Jew. I also happen to be a rabbi. I'm a Californian natively. I'm a former UCSB student. We all have intersecting identities in so many different ways that are also unique, but also have commonalities with other people who share some or many of the identities that we have, right? It's a complex. So in order to sort of get at this, I want to sort of jump out a little bit because I like to travel. And, I've been to Italy, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times in my life. And so I love Italy. And I don't know, maybe you've been to Italy too, or maybe, Italy isn't your thing, but, if you've ever traveled, maybe you've been to China or India or Nigeria or Brazil or, who knows, any other country. But when you visit another country, when you visit another culture, when you visit another people, what are the things that you like to visit and see and experience? And here I want to encourage you just to use the chat. Just, throw in the chat, when you go to another country, when you visit some other, culture, right, just type them in there, right? I see museums, absolutely, right? And they're very different, right? You want to experience some of the history of the people. You want to see the sites, right? The architecture, right? Whether it's a Great Wall in China or, the ruins in Italy or the great museums, the food. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't go there to go to McDonald's, right? We're eating the local food. And there might even be a few more. So, right. So these are the type of things. So when I look at it, right, right, we want to eat in Italy, right, the food, the pasta. You want to also meet the people, right? Part of going is meeting the people and seeing what they're like. Maybe you might learn a little bit of the language. Also, there's a whole culture in Italy. The slow food movement began there by, having long leisurely meals with long discussions. You also, part of the culture is also, you want to, having, late in the afternoon, sitting out on a piazza, having a cappuccino, the Amalfi Coast, right? So when we talk about the historical sites, there's also just the physical layout, right? There's beaches, there's mountains, there's cities. It's, it's visiting the places, the land of the place. The Vatican, there's a whole religious aspect that takes place, in Italy. Right, there's its history and the Renaissance, this contribution they've given, to the Western world. And right, there's ancient history, Roman ruins. So, there's so many different aspects when we go to visit another country or another culture that we want to. And I'm going to suggest that this is like visiting a civilization, that there are many aspects to a civilization, right? Language, land, people, religion, food, traditions, history, ethnicity, right? These are all part of what we experience when we go visit other cultures. Now, the suggestion here is that, this is what's accurate for the Jewish people. Judaism as a civilization, right? Thinking of the Jewish people as what's fundamental. And yes, there is a religion, Judaism, but that's only one aspect of the Jewish people and the Jewish people's identity. And some are tied to the language and some to the land. And some you can hear people call themselves cultural Jews. I've even heard people in my own family call themselves bagels and lox Jews. There's people who are attached to the history. And there are all sorts of aspects of the tradition. Some of them are more bound up with sort of family and people, and others might be bound up with religion, right? It's really diverse. Right, you got 16 million Jews on this earth. Most of them live now in the land of Israel, right? In the modern state of Israel, right? For them, land and language and peoplehood tend to be very much fundamental. While in North America, there was an effort to get along with our Protestant neighbors, so we tried to make our expressions of Judaism look more like a Protestant religious tradition. So we tend to call Judaism not a civilization or people, but often refer to it as a religion. Here's the irony. If you look at some Jewish friends you may have, right? You ask many Jews, right, tend to be very secular. So they say that they're not religious or they're secular. They say Judaism's a religion and they say they're Jewish. But those three statements are sort of inherently contradictory. If Judaism's a religion and I'm Jewish, then I should be religious, but I'm not, right? As we for what there's to say, thank God I'm an atheist tends to be a Jewish expression that we have out there. So this is part of one of the challenges of understanding the Jewish people, is that it's not a religion. Religion is just one aspect of the identity, but the identity is much more diverse, which makes sense over 3,000 years. And the land is integral to that. Years ago, when you land at the airport in Israel, there used to be a sign greeting you, trying to get you to rent a cell phone. Now you don't get the cell phone, you can just get a SIM card and pop it in your own cell phone. But it said, London is cultured, Bangkok is effervescent, New York is trendy, Barcelona is sexy, Prague is beautiful, Tokyo is amazing, but there's no place like home. And that's part of the sense of being part of the Jewish people. And it's hard to understand and appreciate that part of Jewish identity, that the land of Israel, which is now over the past, since 1948, the modern state of Israel, but really the land of the people of Israel for the past 3,000 years. But going on 73 years now of a modern state, it's always been sort of a home to the Jewish people. Let me try and sort of get at that a little bit. How it's central to Jewish identity. If you look at sort of aspects of Jewish religious life, for example, in a prayer that's said traditionally 3 times a day, has this constant reference to Jerusalem and the Jewish people yearning to return there. At the conclusion of like our biggest holidays, of which when the sun goes down tonight, we go into Yom Kippur, and then Passover is in the springtime. We end these celebrations by saying next year in Jerusalem. And we didn't invent this, right? We've been saying this for 2,000 years. This is how we've been celebrating these holy times on the Jewish calendar, yearning to return to Jerusalem, which is really, the center and the capital, or they say the navel of Jewish life in the land of Israel. Whenever there's a tradition, whenever Jewish people eat, they just don't say a blessing before they eat, but they say a longer blessing after they eat. And built into that blessing, which is said every time we eat, is this idea of returning to Jerusalem, with the recognition that the Romans destroyed the Jewish state 2,000 years ago and exiled the Jews, making the Jewish people refugees at that time, going to North Africa and other parts further east, in the Middle East, where Jews have inhabited for centuries and centuries. So there's this yearning to return and rebuild Jerusalem, and soon in our days. And in the afternoon prayers, just once again, another reference here to returning, to the land of Israel. In fact, the word Zion, which is a mountain, one of the mountains in Jerusalem is called Mount Zion, or Zion in Hebrew, right, appears 417 times in the Hebrew scriptures, right? In this 3,000-year-old document, right, you have this idea of returning to the land, which is integral. If we look to 3,000 years ago, when King David moved the capital of the Jewish state, of the Jewish monarchy then to Jerusalem, right? Here's sort of an indication of idea of what the size of the Jewish monarchy, of the Jewish kingdom was back then 3,000 years ago is what it looked like. What's also interesting is also when we look in the Bible in Genesis chapter 12, where you meet Abraham, who's known as Abram at first, the first thing that God says to the first Jew isn't keep kosher, isn't celebrate Jewish holy days, right? The first thing that God says to the first Jew in the Bible, right, in the Hebrew scriptures is move, right? That get out of this land that you're living in now and pack up with your family and go to this new land, this land that I will show you. From the very beginning, this idea that you're not at home living in someone else's land, you're only at home in this land. That is integral. That's from the very, very beginning of the Jewish people. And then, throughout history, there has been, continuous Jewish settlement in the land, going back 2,000 years ago to King Herod, right, who really expanded the kingdom in all sorts of ways. To the early medieval times, you could see the Jewish communities throughout the Holy Land. To then going up, the UN partition plan in 1947, creating both a Jewish state and an Arab state side by side, with Jerusalem being an international city, for both. Of course, that plan never came into fruition. There was a war that was fought, and the armistice lines, were adjusted, where the Jewish state and then land that was part of Egypt or land that was part of Transjordan at the time, which stood from 49 through 67, when there was another war with multiple countries. My light just went out.